Tuesday, September 1st, 2015. Councilor Green, will you lead us in the salute to the flag, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
President Hay.
Here.
Councilor Bean.
Present.
Councilor Boschman.
Present.
Councilor Beazall. Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Di Natale.
Here.
Councilor Green.
Here.
Councilor Joseph.
Here.
Councilor Caddy.
Here.
Councilor Kushmarek. Councilor Tran.
Here.
We will now have the public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on any matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you're addressing public hearing petitions, you will have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the Senate table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item number on the agenda you are addressing. Does anyone wish to speak? Attorney Watts. Good evening.
George Watts, representing Richard Gonzalez and others with respect to petition 17715, which is a new petition which is on the agenda. There is a related order, 16915. I would respectfully ask if the council could suspend the rules and take this matter up for discussion and for action tonight. Thank you very much.
Motion to suspend the rules on 17715.
Do you want to do the order at the same time or separate?
You can. Oh,
You
should
want-
probably do one and then the other.
Okay, you want it in the other. We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules on 17715. All those in favor of suspension? Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Mr. President, could I ask Mr. Watts to give us a little explanation of
Certainly.
I did submit with the petition copies of plans. It's recently been determined that 2 industrial buildings on Broad Street, one at 315 and one at 339 Broad Street, encroach slightly on the top of the Nashua Riverbank. Essentially, the encroachments are less than 2 feet. As part of the process of one of those buildings being sold by Mr. Richard Gonzalez, the current owner of, or the owner of both of those buildings, I submitted the petition. Subsequently, we were able to work out with the purchaser's attorney title insurance issues, the nature of the encroachment, the slight encroachment, and it involved a City of Fitchburg property that essentially is on the riverbank. They were willing to allow us to proceed so that the new owners, Sam and Nick, who are also presently own the building, and we're just asking your consideration in granting an easement. I've discussed the matter with Attorney Barrett. He has granted the appropriate language both for the order and for the easement, which is typical of other easements granted for encroaching structures, that would be at our risk of loss, and if the buildings are ever taken down, that the encroachment would have to be terminated. I believe this is a relatively standard item, and again, I would ask for your favorable consideration.
motion to approve 17715?
We have a motion and a second to approve 17715. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. You have the order?
Can we have the order?
16915. Suspension of the rules
on 16915.
Motion and a second for suspension of the rules on 16915. All those in favor of suspension?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. It is before you.
Motion to approve 16915.
There's a motion and a second to approve 16915. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Anyone else wishing to speak at the public forum? Chief Martineau.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening, Mayor. Ernest Martineau, Chief of Police, City of Fitchburg. Councilors, I'd like to address petition 190-15 this evening. This petition was put forward to allow Murphy's Motor Sales the authority to sell vehicles at the River Street Auto Sales located just down the street. I was contacted by the owners of Murphy Motors a couple of weeks ago. They've been impacted greatly by the bridge project going on, and they were looking for some alternatives. And we came up with an alternative of moving some of their cars down to the River Street Auto. However, it would take a petition to go forward to allow them to move their vehicles and sell them at another car lot. So with that being said, I would ask tonight, so we don't impact them any further, that we suspend the rules and take a vote on this tonight so we can lessen the impact of Murphy's Motors during this bridge construction.
Suspension of the rules on 190.
We have a motion and a second for suspension of the rules on 190-15. All those in favor of suspension? All those opposed? It is before you.
I'd like the motion to amend petition 19015 to read, to allow Murphy's Motor Sales, LEC, 556 River Street, to sell vehicles at car lot owned and operated at the River Street Auto Sales, 369 River Street.
369.
It's 369 River Street. It's River Street Auto Sales.
Move to adopt 19015.
No, we need a vote on the, second on the amendment. Second. Okay. We have a motion to amend 190-15 to change it to River Street Auto Sales, 369 River Street. Councilor Bean.
Just a question to whoever can answer. So originally, we're going down to the old, what I call the old Dufour lot next to the Sullivan's Liquor Store?
Exactly.
Okay, not the one down the road here?
No, the old Dufours and the Dufours is now down on
Yeah.
Rollstone.
I got you. Okay. I think it's a great idea. I mean, we've had construction project last year that impacted a number of the businesses on Lunenburg Street, and we heard the impact of that, and I'm glad that we're a little bit more proactive on this one where we can help these folks out before too
A
late.
few
So,
businesses that are impacted, and we're doing everything we can to minimize the impact on them.
thank you.
Councilor Dean Talley.
How long ago did we know this was going to take place?
Is that for me, Counselor?
Well, it's a general question. How long did we know that this project was going to do this, start?
We've been discussing with LMH, the contractor, for approximately 8 months.
When you say we, you mean the police were?
In general, we've had conversations with the contractor and with the MBTA.
So my
some time.
reason for the question is simply because this is a reactionary petition after this individual's already suffered business, and there's other businesses as well. And again, this is not directed at you. The proactive nature of this is suspect, considering the fact that this should have been done a long time ago, or the wheels should have been in motion a long time ago. And my concern is we're helping this person out. What about the rest of them? You know, I mean, do they even know that they can come before us? Now, I understand it's a certain situation where they can move merchandise onto another lot. My issue with this is the lack of proactiveness in. I'm curious to know, did this business owner have a full understanding of what was going to take place? Or was this kind of a surprise to him?
They were made aware of the project well ahead of the time. What happened in this project, there was several different versions on whether we're going to leave the roadway open, whether we're going to close the roadway altogether. It was determined that in the interest of public safety, we were going to leave the roadway open. So that's the reason we see details down there around the clock. We thought that leaving the roadway open would minimize the impact to specifically Murphy's Motors, since they're at the farthest end of it. And it didn't work out that way. They started seeing a direct impact the day we shut it down to just that one lane.
I guess my point is that was there anybody from the city, not the police, that went door to door on that street and met with the business owners and said, this is what's going to happen. What can we do to mitigate the impact on your business instead of having to put out a fire?
I can't answer that.
I know you can't answer it. It's a rhetorical question because I already know the answer. But I will support this tonight. But this is an aspect of the business unfriendliness we have adopted in this city, because I'd like to know who else on that street is being impacted by this, who got slammed in the face because no one came to them and said, can we help you in any way? So this gentleman is lucky, actually, honestly, but the rest of them, I don't know. I mean, because they can't just move their business to another location. So I think there should have been a lot better, not so much planning, but a lot better information in terms of outreach directly face-to-face with these individuals before this project took place. And that's why I asked originally, how many months did we know about this? And I know the answer, it was several months before it took place. So no criticism on the police. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, can you give us an insight into the impact you're talking about? Impact, financial impact? Or?
I don't have financial impact. Speaking to the owner, I went up to speak to him, talking to him about the impact. The car business is drive-by car business. People drive by, see a car, and they stop. Because of that, no longer exists up there. That's what was directly affecting his business. The other business we're speaking about that has been impacted is the 50/50 Diner. I'm sure their business has been impacted, but they're at the far end of it, and customers still can access their diner. But I'm sure if they were here this evening, they would say their numbers are down as well. When it came to our attention, we're doing everything in our power to lessen the impact. I went up there. I hear his concerns, and this was the most viable solution that he'd be allowed to move his cars and sell them at Dufour's.
I don't have a problem voting in favor of this permit because I think this is the kind of approach we should take in terms of being a business-friendly community. The reason why this petition is being recommended to be sent to Public Safety Committee and Building Inspector is that there are due diligence that we need to do. We don't know if the new site has the same layout as the old site. We don't know how many vehicles the petitioner can fit on the new site. Do we have any of those information from the inspector? Because there's a liability associated with this if we pass this permit and it turns out that there's some things that we didn't discuss and it didn't meet the criteria. This is something that the city solicitor can chime in.
I'm not sure, Councilor. I understand that this is a state project, so I'm not sure what.
We're not discussing about the project. We're discussing about granting a permit allowing the petitioner moving the vehicles, relocating the vehicles from one location to another. The new location requires an inspection from the building department.
And you're suggesting that fee be waived, or?
No, I'm suggesting is there any information from the building department? Any recommendation from the building department? Any liability associated with us passing this without that data?
I think that's something that the building commissioner could address. If the petition is allowed, I think the first step is, do you have the allowance, of the council to do it? And then the building commissioner could speak to the issue of how it can be done safely and without any problems. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
usually it goes through the process, and then all the data is sent to the city council for us to make a determination and pass the permit. Whereas in this case, we're putting the cart before the horse.
Well, I think, Councilor, this is kind of a unique situation. Normally, maybe that's what would happen. Here, we're talking about a situation where we're really taking some sort of extraordinary steps to try to help this business owner because of this project that's going on. So, I don't think you normally would not have a business coming in and ask to be moved onto another business if you didn't have the circumstances that we have here with this project.
If the petition does move forward this evening, it's still at the discretion of the building commissioner to determine how many vehicles should be allowed to go there. So there is still quite a bit of discretion on his part to say 1 vehicle, 5 vehicles, the number of vehicles to be allowed to be moved over there. I don't think we're going to see his entire inventory moved over there. I think we're going to see the commissioner will probably allow a portion of his inventory to be moved over there, so we can at least help this business owner expedite some sales. So.
Thank you.
Councilor Green.
I know for a fact that the other business on that property, the 50/50 Diner, which has been in place as a business for a long time here in Fitchburg, has had some direct negative effect from the closing of that bridge. So I'm wondering if, again, it would have been nice to be more proactive, but this is where we're at tonight, and I'm wondering if we could just move back the Detour Road closed sign a little bit past the 50/50 so that vehicles could still maneuver easily into parking for the 50/50 diner. And then it wouldn't be so obtrusive as like, right there at Oak Hill to be like, stop, can't go any further.
That would sound simple. I've learned very quickly that dealing with the Department of Transportation, nothing is simple.
Okay.
As far as just moving a stop sign or a cautionary sign through the Department of Transportation, it was set by their agency on how the flow of traffic would be and where signage would be, doing detours, so I wouldn't have control over moving that.
And is it mandated, like it has to be so many feet away, or?
It was a very specific plan that was detailed to us at the police station. I've heard the concerns of the 50/50, and they mean as much to me as they do at Murphy's Motors, and we're doing everything in our power to alleviate it. It's tough during this type of construction process, and this is going to be a long project.
Right, I just worry that, we're into September and the project isn't going to be wrapping up before the snow falls, and then it's not easy to get people in and out of there. I just worry that, because again, we hear all the time how, kind of unbusiness friendly we are. So here's a situation where we have an opportunity to work with two businesses directly impacted by this bridge overhaul.
We did work with the businesses up there. They were complaining that the detail cruises were too close to Oak Hill Road, which was scaring away customers. So that's one thing I do have control over. I moved our detail officers back away from the diner to alleviate that confusion. When they saw the cruises, people weren't just turning around and not going to the diner. It really impacted Murphy's Motors because they saw the cruises with the blue lights and they weren't even going to Murphy's Motors. So Murphy's Motors was being hit much harder than the 50/50, but both businesses are being impacted. There's no doubt about it, and that's why we're trying to alleviate it as best we can.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your help with that.
Councilor Boishman.
I'm the ward council in that area. So in all fairness to the city employees, when we say we're not business friendly, I take heart to that, because back in June a year ago, Council Caddy came up in front of us and he told us that the bridge was going to close on June of last year. Then it got postponed for a couple months. It was supposed to go a couple months later, and all of a sudden it got postponed again. Then they came back and they said it was going to close this year of June of this year. Then it got postponed again, and it didn't close until July of this year. And then the 50/50 yelled at me. Yes, he did, because he said I didn't do my job. But I didn't think I should have to go there and tell everybody what they do. I thought the city should did that. And then I found out the next day I went over to some of the businesses, and they did receive letters saying that the bridge was going to close, and when it was going to close, and when it's going to open up again. They say early spring of next year. And I said, well, figure on a good year. So, in all fairness to them, that the young man over there that is running Riverside Automobile, he came before this council and he asked for permission to put 50 cars, and we wanted him to put 75 cars up there. So I don't see a problem why Mr. Murphy can't put some of his cars up there, because we wanted him to put 75 cars, and he said, no, I just want to put 50 cars. And we said, okay, you can put 75 if you want. And he said, no, I just want 50. So I see no problem with him going down there for a time being.
Councilor Caddy.
I just want to fill everybody on the impact of Murphy's Auto Sales. They were selling 10 cars a week, and once the bridge closed, they were selling one every 2 weeks. He's this close of going out of business. Working with Mary Jo Bohat and the chief, trying to find him a place to go. How do we put him on city property? Well, I was lucky enough that the owner of River Street Auto Sales, Mike Dredge, said, I'll do anything I can do to help him. So I want to publicly thank him for doing that. And the idea behind this is to bring Murphy's up to River Street, keep him in business until the bridge opens up again, and then he's going to move back. In the meantime, Murphy's Auto Sales has a lot of experience in selling cars, and I believe the two of them will be a good match for each other, and this will keep another business in the city.
Move 19015 be adopted.
We've already got a motion to amend it. What's on the floor? No speaking to the motion. That's okay. Councilor Bezal.
Thank you. I think overall, it's great to see two businesses come together in the city to help each other out. Part of the petition actually states that the number of vehicles will be at the discretion of the building inspector, so there still is that checks and balance to make sure that it takes place. I do have to agree with Councilor Di Natale that I think in the future, when we have projects of this magnitude, maybe it would be worthwhile for the city to invite the businesses to a meeting and discuss the impact and maybe how we can resolve these things before they happen. But I think that this is great that there was a willingness of another business to help out somebody else in the city, and I think it's great that we have people working with the businesses now to make sure that they get taken care of. Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
You know, I'm terribly sorry that you feel put out by what I said, but you proved my point. It shouldn't take you or him or anybody else to do what we're doing right now. Why are we doing it? That's it. I know people don't like criticism. We don't want our feelings hurt, but you know what? This shouldn't have happened. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to amend 19015 to change it from Dufour Truck and Equipment to R&S Auto Sales, 369 River Street. All those in favor of amending the petition?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Motion to adopt 19015 as amended.
Motion and a second to adopt 19015 as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you,
Chief.
councilors.
Does anybody else wish to speak at the public forum? All have been heard. We move to the report of the Committee on Records. Councilor Green.
Yes, I'd like to report that the minutes from way, way back are in order.
Is that a technical term?
It seems like it's been a long time, but yes, they're in order.
Move that the committee's report be accepted for the minutes read of the last meetings we had.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Committee on Records report. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Communications from Her Honor the Mayor. Dear Honorable Councilors, I hereby appoint and ask for your confirmation of the following individuals as permanent full-time firefighters for the City of Fitchburg. Anthony Liberatore, 404 Westminster Hill Road, Fitchburg, Mass. Nicholas Landry, 146 Ellis Street, Fitchburg. Sincerely, Lisa A. Wong, Mayor.
Comments?
Dear Honorable Councilors, I'm pleased to provide you with the attached actuarial valuation of other post-employment benefits for the City of Fitchburg as of January 1st, 2015. As expected, the results of fiscal year 15 are significantly lower than in fiscal year 13, with our unfunded liability dropping by $90 million from $179 million to $129 million, which is primarily due to the change in the city's Metrics 2 plan for retirees. Again, I acknowledge the cooperative and positive negotiations between the Public Employees Committee and the city management, initiating this and other items as recommended by our health insurance advisors, which have benefited both parties. Sincerely, Lisa A. Wong, Mayor.
Will be placed on file in the clerk's office.
President, just a correction on that. You mentioned 90 million, it's 50 million.
Did I say 90? I did, I'm sorry. It's a reduction of $50 million from 179 to 129. Communications and reports from heads of departments. Councilors, you should have received a communication from, excuse me, my voice is going, allergies, I think, from Mr. Saracen. Should I just place it on?
School spending,
Placed on a file. And then you would have received the Pension Reserves Investment Management Board.
placed on file, Mr. President.
Thank you. Moving forward to the agenda. Special presentation, Mary Jo Bohart, Economic Development Director, regarding economic development strategies. Ms. Bohat, good evening.
One more, please. Good evening, councilors, and also Mayor Wong. I thank you all for this opportunity to appear tonight and give you an update on the work that I've been involved in over the past few months as Economic Development Director. And it takes the form of preliminary economic development strategy. And what I'd like to do is go through a series of slides. I'll go through rather quickly. Of course, I want to leave enough time for you all to have questions at the end, and feel free to stop me at any point as well. And it may be a little difficult to see that with all the lights on. We'll just leave it be. You have hard copies as well. So for those who can see the screen, it's on the screen. Those of you who have hard copies in front of you, that's great. I'd like to kick it off by describing sort of a basic economic snapshot of who we are. These are numbers that a lot of you are very familiar with, but I'll just read through them very quickly. So our population, based upon the 2010 census, is about 40,300 people. Median household income, once again, according to the census, about $45,363. The number of employers. This is a fluid number. There's a few different numbers out there, but this particular one's relatively recent, about 1,480 employers here in Fitchburg. How many employees? The number of jobs we have here in the city, about 10,000, just a little bit over 10,000. And once again, figures that you're familiar with, but the commercial, industrial, personal property tax rate for fiscal 2015 is $26.35 a thousand. The tax levy for commercial industrial property 2015 is about 27% of the levy, and the actual tax revenue, once again from the commercial side, is about $12,400,000. And I put those out there simply to set the stage for kind of where we are right now. You can go ahead to the next slide. In the work that I began several months ago, there was quite a bit of reconnaissance for me to get familiar with the community, and it took the form of working with people, getting to know a lot of people through one-on-one conversations, also time spent in the field familiarizing myself with the commercial areas of our city, and also review of documents, existing plans and documents that we have on file relative to various aspects of economic development up to this point. So the initial reconnaissance involving people, I was on a bit of a listening tour and talked one-on-one with over 150 different folks, elected officials, municipal department heads, staff, business leaders, local nonprofit organizations, civically active residents, state officials, real estate professionals, and others too. This work will keep going on, but from that I gained a great deal of insights about this city and what people's priorities are, what their concerns are, what their desires are. So that was very helpful. Next slide. That was combined with what I call field visits. So gaining visual familiarity with all of our commercial districts, the downtown area, the John Fitch corridor, Water Street corridor, Summer Street airport area, West Fitchburg in the River Street area, West Fitchburg along Route 31 in the industrial parks, Lunenburg Street corridor, Electric Ave in the Park Hill Plaza area, and also South Street and Wayland Street areas. So field reconnaissance, familiarity, conversations, one-on-ones, and then that was supplemented with reconnaissance of some of the documents that we have already in existence regarding economic development here in the city. The Foster Report, which is an annual industrial market survey, the most recent one. The Wachusett Smart Growth Corridor Analysis done by the Regional Planning Organization. The Montechusett Regional Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, document. It is a regional document, relatively recent, and it includes Fitchburg. The Downtown Fitchburg Master Plan, which is a design-related document. Revitalizing John Fitch Highway, which was an analysis or a study. Downtown Fitchburg Urban Renewal Plan, and also the Vision 2020, our comprehensive master plan. So those are just a few of the documents that I took a look at as well. After this reconnaissance, what started to reveal itself to me were some of our assets and also some of our challenges. And so I quickly want to go through economic development assets, and they're in no particular order in some ways, but I have put some that were mentioned frequently closer to the top. The fact that we have our MBTA commuter rail service into Boston is a very big asset. Fitchburg State University as an institution and as a partner is a huge asset for us. The fact that we have ample water supply, where a number of other communities may not in our region, is a huge asset for us. The city's long history as a place of manufacturers, or what we often call makers in today's words, is quite a solid asset. Monty Tech, the vocational high school, our municipal airport, the Nashua River as an aesthetic and recreational amenity, our historic character and distinctive architecture, and also our network of recreational areas, both passive and active. So these types of things being on the asset or positive side, balanced against some of our challenges. And once again, some of these will be familiar to many of you. Our indirect highway access to Route 2, with the exception of the west part of Fitchburg along Route 31, our aging roadway infrastructure, limited numbers of large flat development sites, slightly due to our topography and also due to just there isn't a lot of vacant land at present, extensive commercial vacancies in a few different districts, high energy costs, underutilization of some existing industrial buildings, and by that it often is dead storage rather than active use of some buildings. Historical industrial mill buildings are not really suitable for today's modern industrial users, so that represents a challenge. We have some abandoned factories that will need demolition, and presently we have a split tax rate within a region where there are many other communities that happen to have a uniform rate. So those are some challenges that we have to balance against our assets and so on. And before I move on to broad goals that started to reveal themselves to me, I wanted to take a quick pause. Any questions on anything I've mentioned up till now? And we can circle back around at the end too. Yes.
Mary Jo, where are our city placemakers now? I mean, because we've heard of placemakers, you know what I mean, the little areas in some of these already developed areas. Do we have any of those in place right now?
Our placemaking activities that we will be doing relative to the recent new grant funding have yet to be put into the downtown, although we as a city have already established placemaking in our downtown through some of the work by Pride and by the Art Museum and others. So some of the things that have already taken place, usually it was art related, that has already taken place in our downtown, would be considered placemaking kind of by national measures. But the new placemaking activities will be focused in a tightened area of the downtown, kind of Main at Day and kind of Main through Pritchard in that area as sort of an experimental series that you'll be seeing over the next several weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So with that, I will press on. Broad economic goals for Fitchburg, and I'm just going to rattle through them rather quickly. Positioning the city as a business-friendly location, and that could especially be done through our new website, which is currently under construction. Strengthening the image of our commercial gateways, and that is something that was mentioned by multiple people, so that is a solid goal that we need to focus on. Expanding our commercial tax base beyond the current 27% of the levy. Increasing employment in our city, and most particularly living wage jobs rather than lower wage jobs. That would be something we want to strive for. Cultivating entrepreneurs here locally, because these homegrown small businesses could become the new occupants of vacant spaces that we presently have. And then fostering loyal consumers among our local population, and that notion of shop local and kind of getting that to be a stronger belief and behavior amongst our locals. From that, these broad goals that I've just mentioned, I've come up with approximately yes.
Councilor.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I got one question. It says here you want to increase employment. According to a study done by the Chamber of Commerce, the city of Fitchburg lacks the necessary skills to compete in an open job market. What are we going to do to increase that in the city of Fitchburg?
That's an excellent point, Councillor Boschman. I'm glad you brought it up. Workforce development and job training is going to be something that we will be partnering with various institutions on, whether it is the job training centers or Monty Tech or even Fitchburg State, depending on exactly what, or Mount Wachusett Community College. So to the degree there are skills gaps that some of our employers are identifying, they can't find the types of employees they need here locally, we will be looking how to make sure that our local population is more job ready. And that also goes to, I'll say, the next generation coming up of the workers yet to be, making sure that they are job ready for their first jobs and so on. So I hear what that commenter said to you, and it's absolutely valid. I don't think we are unique in the region. I think other communities in the region also have to be mindful of their workforce development and job training, but that's something that we're going to definitely be focusing on with these partner organizations.
One other question.
Yes.
You say Monty Tech, you say the university, you say Mount Wachusett Community College. What about the high school? Because according to their records, and when I was up there with Mr. Councilor DiNatale, they said 99% of the students are going to go to college. Well, I disagree. Maybe they will go to college for a month and they'll drop out. So that means they're going right into the workforce. And what I would like to see and try to do as a city is try to eliminate a workday program where they go to work for somebody else and they're making a buck off of their rear end and they're getting minimum wage. But these other people that are farming them out are making top dollar and they're living high off the hog. Why? Why are we doing that as a city? And you look like, and I say that because I call them headhunters. They make good money off of people like me who have no skills. They go to workday programs and they only pay $8, $9, $10 an hour, and they have to bust their butt for the $8, $9, $10 an hour in today's market. And you don't get ahead. You're behind. And this is why we can't get ahead, and this is why we can't fill our downtown stores, because they don't make enough money to support our downtown stores.
These are all very valid points, and I'm glad that you're bringing them up. One of the best ways for me in my role to get to the bottom of what you're describing is to establish ongoing close relationships with our employers. And that way we understand where are they getting their workforce from? Where are the deficiencies? Are our workers up to the standards that they need? Where are their gaps? When we identify certain types of skill gaps that we're hearing from one employer after another, then turning to these various schools and training institutions and making sure that we get our young people and older workers too, to the point where they can fill these jobs. Forgive me for not mentioning Fitchburg High School as I was rattling off those other institutions. It was certainly right up there with them as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to press on now. Very quickly, I'm going to go through draft economic strategies. I have 7 of them that I've identified, and keep in mind that I'll be eager to hear comments from you all this evening, and then as time goes on through the community, I'm sure we will hear more. Strategy number 1, increasing the city's competitiveness. And this can be done through a number of different means. Briefly, I'm going to quickly go through them. Developing marketing materials and business incentive info. Be proactive in telling the city's narrative through public relations that is targeted. Establish formal business visitation programs, and also utilize a team, almost a team of ambassadors, if you will, that would go out. It may not always be the same folks, but it would be myself, maybe some of you, depending on your schedule, but making sure that the businesses feel that they are being visited by people who really care about the city. Establish a formal, collaborate with city departments for a smooth permitting experience. Advocate on behalf of local businesses when necessary. Address regulations that could be barriers towards the growth of certain types of businesses here locally. Establish a standing TIF commission, Tax Increment Financing Commission, that would develop consistent guidelines for future development incentives. So these are just a few things under what I would call increasing the city's competitiveness. And then the next slide. Strategy 2 would be to effectively market Fitchburg to prospective new businesses. And this could be done through targeting key industries and also businesses through outreach, showcasing available Fitchburg sites on the Mass Econs site search. This is a state searching tool for various available sites. Establish a close rapport with commercial brokers, assure timely replies to all commercial inquiries, and consider a developer tour of focused properties or districts. So that would be for marketing Fitchburg to prospective new businesses. Strategy 3, proactively retain existing businesses, those that we already have here, establishing an ongoing dialogue with current businesses to learn of their needs and their challenges. Serve as a liaison between local businesses and government when needed to resolve issues and articulate concerns. Assist growing businesses so that they can remain and expand, encourage group marketing opportunities and the notion of shop local, and explore utilization of a meals tax as a dedicated revenue source for effective ongoing marketing of local businesses. And that last one is simply to look into it. I know this is something you all had considered a while ago and tabled, so it could be something to explore. Next slide. Strategy 4, address widespread vacancies. And this could be done by accurately inventorying the vacant commercial space by district, outreach to landlords and brokers to learn the status of these vacancies, investigate building code status of these vacant properties, engage developers in reuse discussions of certain key sites, and nurture local entrepreneurs as possible future occupants of this vacant space. Next slide. Strategy 5, address underutilized tenancies. This is the type of space or industrial space that is being used more as storage rather than for employees to work in. Quantifying use of storage as an interim use will be an important step. Engaging landlords to better understand building conditions and lease terms. Engage brokers to understand the market and demand. And also increase the awareness of our Economic Development Incentive, or EDIP program, because this could be a possible catalyst to building improvements and reinvestment. Strategy 6, engage partner organizations through close collaboration and a representative list of those organizations, not exhaustive list, but a representative list: Fitchburg State University, Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority, the Fitchburg Plan, which is a group of business and civic leaders, Fitchburg Pride, the group of downtown advocates, Montechusett Regional Planning Commission, MRPC, the North Central Mass Chamber of Commerce, that is an SBA preferred lender, the North Central Mass Economic Development Council, which is the Chamber's sister organization which deals with business assistance, Twin Cities CDC, the Fitchburg Art Museum, and the Fitchburg Historical Society. And then the final strategy that I'm suggesting is to pursue alternative energy options as a revenue source or to offset high rates. And this could be done by investigating approaches used by other communities, considering the West Fitchburg proposal for an anaerobic digester, engaging the Mass Clean Energy Center as a resource, and even utilizing the Mass Office of Business Development as a resource to see what is being done in other parts of the Commonwealth. So I went through these strategies rather quickly, and I'm certainly eager to open it up to questions. One last point that I'd like to make before I do that is what's missing? What are the next steps? And one of the first next steps is to solicit public input on these draft economic development strategies. Also, it'll be important to create and maintain an accurate database of commercial properties. This would be the total number of commercial sites, the vacant sites, and then identifying them by district. Also important will be to begin discussion of master planning beyond the year 2000 Urban Renewal Plan and the year 1998 Vision 2020 document. So those documents are older, and there will be a point where we need to start to think of our future even beyond those documents. Host a series of public conversations for specific commercial areas. This could involve landlords separately and tenants separately by commercial area, and then actively pursue funding sources, federal, state, or other, that would serve our economic development needs. Transformative Development Initiative, or TDI, is a state funding round. They had it for the first time last autumn. We did not get funded, so we'll be looking forward to a future funding round and seek to be competitive in that. The Mass Works grant program, River Street, there is a proposal that is being put together for infrastructure upgrades, and that will be submitted shortly, so that will be very important. The Working Cities grant funded through the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston will have successive rounds. We've already seen how that is playing out here in Fitchburg, and we look forward to seeing more of that work. And of course, the HUD Section 108 loan program, which is something that would be used very sparingly and deliberately on certain properties, so I have where appropriate. With that said, I'd like to open it up to questions for all of you, but I did have one, what I call a bonus takeaway thought, and it came from so many of the conversations I've had, and that it just rings true for me that we are all ambassadors of the city of Fitchburg. And what I mean by that, we have elected officials, we have staff, we have civically active residents, business folk, and in our formal lives, even in our informal lives, any or all of us can become the city's greatest champions. And so I just wanted to remind everyone of that, and I'd welcome questions.
Councilor Dean.
Thank you. And this is very refreshing, Mary Jo. Appreciate it. Long time overdue and great work to date. I would suggest, though, that, as we get our new website up and going, I'm not sure if it's there yet, but a lot of this information you put on the website if you're trying to get the information out to the public and that. And there's also social media, whether it's Facebook or other entities out there, other ways to get public input is important. I think the more we can converse with people, the more we can have people understand what we're doing, the better we are. As we talked about that earlier situation on River Street, letting people know too late doesn't help. I think the earlier we get this out to the public in any way possible, whether you're on the radio talk show, at the local cable access TV doing a show, but I think the more and more we can get out and talk about it, the better off we'll be, and hopefully be more positive reaction from people than the past negative stuff we've seen.
Excellent.
So I appreciate your hard work.
Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor Joe, thank you for joining us tonight.
You and I have had several conversations on economic development in person, by phone, and by emails. One of the things that we discovered was that you and I are on the same page and all of the stuff we talked about. And it's, I concur with Councilor Bean, is that it's refreshing to be able to converse with someone who share the same ideas, outlook, and vision for the city. So thank you very much for that. I'm looking through your strategies, and they're very similar to how I would look at it, as creating the foundation and infrastructure before we tackle the problems. When I first proposed your position and helped fund it, I didn't do it and then wipe my hands and say I'm done. I followed up with several other proposals, including creating a business database, which you included in your next steps, create a tax incentive plan to attract businesses, which you have it in your strategy 1, identify city land and properties for rezoning to promote businesses. I like that. I saw that you included in your strategy number 4, and conduct a business survey and analysis, which is really critical for us as a city to find out what are the hardships that our current businesses are going through. And I appreciate that you included that in your strategy number 3. So all of that, if we can accomplish and successfully accomplish all the strategies you set forth, I think we would create a healthy path to being able to identify all the problems we have and then solve them. And of course, all the problems that I would have, I think you listed under your section as challenges. So let me touch upon some of those problems. I know that we've talked as a city about the dual tax rate, lack of access to the highway. Those are problems, yes, I agree with them, but they're not big problems in my opinion. 3 of the biggest problems that I see is the utility costs, 1. I've had many discussions with businesses who have left Fitchburg and moved to our neighboring cities. I don't want to mention the cities and give them credit. What I've heard was that now their utility bills are 1/3 of what they used to pay when they were in Fitchburg. 1/3, Mary Jo. That's mind-boggling. So we have to do something. I know you have a bullet point about finding new energy resources. I think one of the things we need to do as a city is that our leaders need to sit down with the senior management of Unitil and put everything on the table, be honest with each other, and say to the senior management of Unitil that if the city is successful, they benefit as well. So we need to come up with a plan with Unitil. The second biggest problem that I see and that I've heard is that customer service in City Hall. I think all of my colleagues have heard that. Coming from these businesses that I have talked to in the past, they said that there's a lot of red tape and a lot of hindering instead of helping. They said that when they moved to other cities, City Hall opened up their arms to them. And one of the business told me that when they had a grand opening in that city, the mayor came and spent half of the day with them, and all the departments came and just welcomed them, and that's an environment that we should be preaching as well. So I think you cover that under the business-friendly strategy there. Third is something that you don't have in your presentation is that under the challenges, safety and crime. A successful business will advocate for safety for their employees and their properties. That's something that we have a problem in the city. When we have panhandling, prostitution, drug dealing, and drug use in plain sight, those are deterrents to businesses coming to the city. When we have way too many social services that attract these kinds of behaviors, that's when we need to say enough is enough. We need to share the burden with. We need other communities to share the burden in these problems. So I think those two problems, the latter two, are not mentioned under your challenges, which I would like to see. And overall, I think your presentation is a great one. It's a monumental task for you to help revive our economy, and I have faith in you because of all the discussions you and I've had. You seem to think like I do, so that's where the faith comes in. And I think by now, through all our discussions, I think you have you understand my frustration with the lack of business growth and the lack of economic development progress in this city in the past 20 years. So I'm here to work with you. I have a very good friend who is the Assistant Secretary for Massachusetts Economic Development, that I would like to bring him in and meet with us. And then as a city, I am sure all my colleagues will concur that we're here to work with you. And I'm very optimistic that together we can move forward. Thank you, Mayor Joe.
Councilor Pizzo. Thank you. Mayor Joe, just let me think a little bit out loud here for a minute, and then you can kind of formulate your answer. So I see on this presentation that you gave us some hat hangers, some assets that we have that we need to market, and we need to get that out. And then I also see that we have some opportunities with the gateways to our city and things that currently we need to do, because if you're going to sell our city, you don't want to bring somebody into the city that's unkept. So there sounds to me like there's some initial costs that we need up front before we start going out and inviting all these businesses to come to Fitchburg, we need to dress it up first. So I guess my question is there an action plan or maybe a business plan that we can develop from this report of maybe some of the top priorities that you could bring back to the city council and you can say, Plan A, this is what I'd like to do and this is what the cost is. Plan B is this and Plan C is this. So if you want everything, this is what it's going to cost you. But there has to be that price of entry to do business in Fitchburg. And one of the complaints that I constantly get is the gateways to our city, and we don't have anybody out there cutting brush. They don't look clean. They don't look neat. And I would hate to think that you're picking somebody up at Fitchburg Airport to drive them through our city, and we're not ready for them to come here. So I guess my question is can we take this now and turn it into action plan or business plan?
Thank you for suggesting these questions, and you're absolutely correct. That is a logical next step because some of these things have real costs to them. Some of the things that I'm suggesting are manpower, and I will be doing them. Some of the things are physical things in the field, in our community, to get our house in order so that we can present ourselves well. And I would look forward to putting some dollars to that so that you can start to prioritize this versus this versus this. Because you're right. If we were to show some of our available areas at present, some of them won't show well. And what resonates in my head is something that our current State Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Jay Ash, said. He told us a story recently at an event I was at about when he worked in Chelsea, and he tried to lure, in this case it was the Patriots, to come to Chelsea. And he didn't have his house in order, and the meeting didn't go well, and obviously they're not in Chelsea. He told us this because his takeaway was we all have to get our house in order before we really shop ourselves aggressively. So yes, short answer, yes. The other thing is some of the real estate community has shared with me just the notion of tidiness. And there is a cost to being tidy, but just whacking the weeds, making sure things look tidy, making sure there's no debris dumped anywhere, so on. Even before the really expensive physical improvements, just being picked up and tidy goes a long way. And being able to quantify the areas where that's needed most and putting costs to that so you all can make the kinds of decisions that you'd need to make on what to prioritize. I'd look forward to putting those kinds of numbers together for you to evaluate.
Thank you. Councilor Joseph, there's just so much conversation we can generate from this plan. It goes well beyond. I mean, the Vision 2020, I mean, there was an attempt there. I'm sure you had to dust that off and get it. It's just there's things that people have come up with in the past that need to be updated and or revised so that we don't just keep reinventing the wheel. We just keep moving forward. I mean, a couple of things that I took away, agricultural growth. You put it down as an opportunity, but there is at least one group that's growing and thriving in this city is an agricultural entity, and we also put in an agricultural culture so that we can foster that, and it might be another business area that we can explore for jobs. In your thing where it says increased employer living wages, industrial versus commercial, I know so many people in the commercial area that are working 2 to 3 jobs, because even at $12 to $14 an hour, you're making $2,000 a month. Market rate apartments are $1,000 a month. Where does the money go? So I mean, I don't know what is left of our industrial base or where our industrial base future is, but it definitely needs to be expanded as a priority. But commercial, I think, is what brings people into the city. But what are we looking for? I don't want to see a lot of commercial, because I don't think commercial is going to bring us the living wage that we're looking for the people of Fitchburg. But we do have to keep growing our city. And you said that is there incentive for repurposing? Is there a potential for the city to have
incentives for repurposing properties.
When you, sorry.
If that
Oh, I
just
don't.
stays-
Okay,
that
sorry.
stays on.
I'll speak loudly.
Yeah.
When you say repurposing, what first comes to mind, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, is we're using spaces that are dormant, or are you speaking of things that are currently in use, which would become an altogether different use?
Buildings that are not in
Not in
current
use.
code and not in use that
Yes.
need extensive work.
Yes.
Is the city offering incentives to help them make those decisions, or is there ways that we can go out and get incentives through the state?
We likely will need to look at creating some new incentives, because other than the Economic Development Incentive Program, the TIF program, that is a state program which could be used locally when there's physical improvement being done, an expansion, renovation, that kind of thing. Other than that type of program, we have presently no unique programs for renovation and repurposing of commercial space. But it has been suggested to me by some of our leaders in banking here in the city that maybe some of our banking institutions might need to capitalize a special fund. It would probably be a loan fund of some sort, but that would be tailored towards some of our maybe severely out-of-code vacant spaces that are kind of, it's a chicken and egg. A tenant prospect is not going to do all the renovation to get those sites ready for use again, and yet we want them to be used again.
Yeah, it's just that we have a lot of challenges, okay, and I just don't know how we make challenges into opportunities or what we as the city do. I know that we need to be more user-friendly, okay, and we need to develop a plan. I still hope to see out of this a plan that when somebody walks through the doors at City Hall, they know who they're going to see, they know what the process is going to be, and they know that everybody in that room is going to be working to make them successful as opposed to not successful. And can we see something in the near future as to what that plan is? Because that's our biggest part, is the city is how, in order for us to grow, we have to make ourselves available to people that want to come in here, because that's our biggest image negative right now, is we don't invite people in, and when people do come in, we invite them to leave. Okay, so I guess we need to stop that image right now, today, and I want to know what's being done today to make sure we change that image.
Sure. And thank you for articulating it in that way, because the type of plan, as you were describing what you were seeking, what you'd like us to have, it feels like an internal sort of plan, how we internally interact with one another departmentally. When someone comes for a type of a service, how does that flow to the next in the chain? Is there an ombudsman who helps the business through all that? All those types of things. Probably it's best for it to be laid out.
Yep.
Because when it's in writing, when it's something that everyone has kind of vetted and agreed upon, it's much easier to make sure that we're administering it on a daily basis in all of our different work roles.
Right. I mean, we did things about quick permitting and stuff like that, and it's just I have yet to see anybody apply for a quick permit yet. You know, we did a lot of things to help people. FRA supposedly was bringing people in, and we have just stopped. And I just want to see it start. That's all.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Personally, from where I sit, a lot of what has been presented is no surprise. And unfortunately, there are some things that we have no control over. We don't have any control over access to the highway. We don't have any control over Unitil, as badly as people like to tell others in the city we do. We don't. It only can be changed through state legislation, which the powerful lobbying groups for these companies keep stifling. So Unitil's here to stay until that passes. We have a tax rate that's 40% higher than all of the cities and towns throughout the North Central region. So if you want to do business in this city, your bottom line is already impacted by several thousands of dollars. It amazes me there are people in this room and outside this room who disregard the total tax rate as a reason why we don't have business here. We already have Unitil. We can't affect that, but we have the dual tax rate. And quite frankly, if you're a prospective business owner who wants to come here, you can go across the border for $5,000 less per year. That is not negativity. That is a statement of fact. So that is one area that we have to continue to move towards. The other issue I didn't hear touch upon is changing this perception and this magnetism for curing the ills of the state of Massachusetts. We are a draw on social service agencies here. And every time you say that, you have people say, oh, you're being mean. No, you're being factual. We are taking in everybody else's issues, and we're doing it without balance. So I would like to see a study conducted or to see some data behind that it's not a theory, it's been reported. How much how much does Fitchburg cater to North Central Mass and beyond that other cities and towns are not contributing? Because, quite frankly, the perception I feel personally as a voter, as a taxpayer, is we have no problem bringing in nonprofits and social service agencies. And then the city next to us gets a Wendy's or a Burlington coat factory. You know, I've had it. So, and I've made it clear before, I'm not a big fan of arts in terms of economic revival. I'm not, because I haven't seen it yet. And I think the finances are the biggest problem, coupled with the crime problems going on in some areas. Those are the two biggest things. I work in a building where there's over 300 people. And the people from outside the city who come in say to me, Mary Jo, all the time, they are astounded that there is no place for them to walk to besides one business to get a sandwich wrap or a cup of coffee. They got to walk up the street to City Hall Cafe or go get a sandwich at Espresso's Pizza or at the point is they want to go somewhere right where they work. And there's over 300 people. And I'm told there's no market for it. How is there no market for it? My only thought is it's because the cost of doing business here is astronomically ridiculous. I just don't understand it. So I would like to know, I hope your focus going forward is more outreach, more focusing on the financial aspect of things, because when you do the financial comparison, we are not even in the realm of competition, not even in the realm. I looked at the state website yesterday, the DOR website. I saw the tax rates for Fitchburg and all of the cities and towns in our area. We're not even close. I mean, it's ridiculous, and that is a result of poor management for the last 30 years. That you, unfortunately, we have turned our lonely eyes onto you to help us correct it, because years ago we had a big plot of land we could have used for an industry by Route 2, and we gave it away to a developer to get quick cash. And, you know, it just pains me. There is a business in Moran Square, and that business owner said to me that he's thinking of leaving because he's not getting any. He hasn't seen anybody from the city in years. No one's gone to see him. No one's gone to talk to him, and he's got a big business. I am optimistic in your efforts, but some of the things that we have for problems, I'm afraid we're not going to be able to fix. So we got to attack the things that we can fix. And that's what I hope we're going to focus on.
Could I I want to chime in on a few things, because you touched on a number of subjects, but two in particular that I really wanted to just share a few insights or thoughts. With regards to dining for the workday crowd, you're absolutely correct. We're certainly not a food desert, but we have limited options in our downtown, and that's something that we're certainly going to be looking to foster more of, because many downtowns that have gone through a deep transition reinvent themselves as sort of a dining and nightlife type of and services too. But that's often one of the things that the strength that comes out eventually. So that said, we all will have a tremendous opportunity and maybe even a responsibility in just a month or so when Beamer's Pub and Grill opens up its new location squarely in the downtown, quite close to your workplace, and they're going to open up with weekday lunch. And I hope that all of us, and I'm going to be pretty aggressive in talking to employers and employees, that we frequent it during weekdays for lunch, because that's exactly what we want more of.
Weekends are great, but and evenings are great, but weekday lunch, that's not something we have a lot of. So that's a great example. We want to see more of that. And then also, many of the things that you were saying, absolutely true. I would say with regard to the arts as potentially a catalyst, I respect, once you see it, you'll believe it more. There have been other examples elsewhere beyond Fitchburg where it has borne some fruit. I think there's a lot to what that could do for us. It's not the silver bullet, but it will be something that we want to certainly nurture and so on. And I think that you are right about we feel as though we have a lot of our social service agencies. Do we have more than our fair share? What is the impact of that? And that's something I can certainly take a look at.
And lastly, with the business-friendly aspect,
Yes.
we need to have a building department and enforcement agencies, building board of health, who don't go after the little old lady who has an easement 2 feet into the property line, which would cause chaos across the street, versus a building that looks like crap with brush and growth everywhere, and that's just sitting pretty there and nothing's being done about it. I mean, there are cases where our resources are being focused on the most menial, ridiculous things when there is something glaringly obvious right next door to it. And when you go around the neighborhoods, these blighted properties, we really need to attack those at the choke point and not focus on the little old ladies and men who have a fence that's 2 inches 2 inches off the boundary line. It just, there are examples of such nitpickiness as opposed to going after the real eye-opening problems. So I don't really know if that's something you can fix, but it's a mentality
It's good for me
thing.
to hear that that's a big concern, and I certainly I'm going to be paying attention to it. As counselors, you may already be aware that this summer there was an intern, very talented, pair of interns actually, that developed a form for use in the field when, whether it's our building inspection staff, but also counselors on a smartphone or a pad. If you see something, you're able to kind of input it, and that way any or all of us can be the eyes and ears in the street, because sometimes if we are short-staffed as a city, sometimes you all might be seeing something. I know as counselors that's something you do anyway, but there is now a way for us to log it in more easily and then start to track it better. So,
But again, I don't want it to be lost. Thank you very much for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
And I hope to get regular updates from you. It's good to have a true economic development professional in this job. And I have, as I said earlier, all the confidence in the world in your abilities and what you can do for the city. I see us going nowhere but up. But it's going to be a very, very difficult feat, but I have confidence. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor Joe, looking at your strategies again, are they prioritized by importance?
Only to the degree, no, the numbering sequence wasn't, like number one isn't necessarily the absolute first, although it was mentioned. These were things that through conversations, more and more people were bringing this up or that up. And so to some degree, those kind of rose to the top of the numerical listing.
So at some point, are you going to look at prioritizing this list of strategies, and are you going to put together a timeline in terms of detailing each of these strategies?
Yes, the intent would be this being an initial hearing, or to get your reaction. The public comment that still needs to be obtained, in the business community, in the ward meetings, others, that are just now kind of giving us their input as well. So the prioritization of what are, the number one things that really need to be tackled first, and also some of them, as was mentioned earlier, have costs involved, and so giving you a better sense of that as well.
Okay, as long as you keep the counts up to date
Yes.
in terms of when you're going to prioritize the strategies, when are the timeline you're going to devise for each of these strategies with details, because right now the train is moving, and I'd like to keep that train moving. If we don't, it's going to stop. And then what we're going to see is that the city is going to resort to raising property taxes like we've been for many, many years, because that's all we've known how to do in this city, and not focus on economic development. And this is the beginning of what we all been looking for many years. And I would hate to see that we slow down the train at all.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Joe.
Thank you.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Mary Jo, thanks for being here this evening. I'll keep my comments very brief. Always encouraged by your optimism and certainly the progress to date, and in such a quick fashion that you've put this before us. I think we can all agree on many of the challenges. I think we've talked about them until we're blue in the face, and I think so many of us see so many opportunities for growth and for progress, and there's so many different directions we could all move in, and I think that's why it's so important that you're our field marshal in all of this. You'll really be setting the direction and the tone and helping us to prioritize, where we can be most effective and efficient moving forward. I saw one strategy, number 6, and I know you touched on it very briefly, and that was just the partnerships and collaboration. There's organizations, there's individuals, and businesses that have been kind of idle, just waiting for this opportunity to really partner and be able to put in a certain amount of effort and have it really pay off and be a part of something. And I think that's key to getting them to feed into these next strategies and these new plans. Earlier on, you had mentioned, you had touched on a couple of plans and documents that were rather out of date, crafted in 1998, 2000, 15, 17 years later. Those now, if they haven't been updated or revised or dusted off, it's kind of troubling. They certainly can't guide us if they haven't been revisited. The point of all documents is that it's kind of a living, breathing document for these plans, that they're flexible enough to adapt. Certainly hope that we can adapt them or revise them a little bit to suit our purposes now, but I think that's the perfect way to, through your strategy number 6 of collaborating to revise these documents or redraft them if that's what's necessary. I work in academia, so there's always these plans and working groups and committees, lots of talking and written documents, but I think in this case you can accomplish a lot by sitting down and looking to see, can we set a plan and can we hold to this plan, not to go back on a shelf, but rather to really help guide us and steer the direction, regardless of who's the personnel leading it. That document, we should always be able to go back and revisit and say, okay, we've done this, what do we need to do next? So I'm thrilled to see that you've already identified that as a strategic need. I'm excited where we go next. We're not going to solve the problems tonight, but I look forward to working with you in the months and years to come.
Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
I want to say thank you. I got one question because I'm new at this and I don't understand sometimes different things. Are we going to just jump into things just because we all are looking for our city to prosper and say Councilor DiNatale starts a business and he only wants to pay his client people in there $8 an hour or $9 an hour, whatever the minimum wage is, and you say, well, come to Fitchburg, we'll support you. Or are we going to be picky and choose who we're going to allow into this community?
You bring up a good point, which is the types of employers do we wish to attract, and what types of jobs do we want our population to have access to, and there will be parties who approach us, and so when that happens, and it has been happening, it will continue to happen. We as a city and you as leaders will get the chance to weigh the pros and cons of some of these things. But when we're proactive, when I'm proactive seeking out this type of a business or that type of a company, that might be where we would have the most control over the kinds of jobs that we seek to cultivate here. And then, of course, with our existing employers, those that we know have good jobs, doing everything we can to make sure they are content here and they can grow here.
Now, one thing I want to say, when we develop this plan, why don't we use smart growth in this plan and say, think about a consumer to say he wants to get to point A to point B in a certain amount of time. He doesn't want to be stuck up by Kmart for 14 sets of lights, waiting in traffic and getting impatient. And if we do this right, we can have a really good community, I believe, if it's done right with smart thinking.
You're actually describing some of the principles that we're seeing more and more in cities all across the country, and that is the quality of life that we want for ourselves. And a lot of it may be not needing to drive very far for what we need, getting what we need right in our own backyard, whether it's jobs, services, goods. That probably will be something that will resonate with our broader population.
And then my final question, and Councilor DiNatale talked about it. Unitil, our cousin, our friend, whatever you want to call him. How are we going to get around the simple fact if we bring in solar power or anything you want to say, we still have to use their lines, and they call it a distribution charge. And that's what's really killing everybody. It's the charges that they put on us. Unless we go around and we put all new poles up and all new wiring, how are you going to get around that? Is there a plan on that? How to get by that?
Well, there isn't a plan presently, but you're certainly hitting on a challenge that we have to do our very best to solve for ourselves to the degree we can. It would be premature for me to speculate on the best way to tackle it, but it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And you'll probably be hearing from me again.
I'm sure.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
Thank you very much.
Moving forward on the agenda, annual report 167-15 of the Fitchburg Public Library. Motion and second that the annual report of the Fitchburg Public Library, the reading be waived and be placed on file in the clerk's office. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Reports of committees. Public Works Committee.
Will the committee's report be accepted?
We have a motion second that the Public Works Committee report of July 28, 2015 be accepted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Recessed hearing, 09415. Fitchburg City Council, pursuant to the unanimous affirmative vote on April 22nd, 2015, on petition 3815, filed by Councilor Stephen Hay, does now propose that Chapter 181 zoning of the Code of City of Fitchburg be amended to create a solar farm component. Declare the hearing resumed. City Solicitor.
Mr. President, I would suggest the council at this time continue the hearing further. We are still working with the planning board, and we do need to receive a report from them. I think that they have some language that they're working on that would form the body of this ordinance. We don't have that language yet, so I would suggest that the council move or continue the hearing to a date certain, which I believe would be in October. I think it makes sense to put it into October. I believe it's October 6th, the first meeting in October.
Motion to continue the hearing to October 6th.
We have a motion and a second to continue 9415 to October 6, 2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Public hearing, 28214. Kenneth J. Mattson, President Mattson Homes, Inc., to accept the portion of Parker Hill Drive from its northerly terminus at the intersection of Briarwood Drive to Briarwood Drive as a public way. I declare the hearing open. Is the petitioner here? Good evening, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Ken Mattson. He's the president of Mattson Homes, Inc. This is an ongoing development of a subdivision in West Fitchburg. Essentially, it's nearing completion. A portion of the roads have already been accepted as a public way. The petition before you tonight is for another 900 feet, more or less, of roadway, which has gone through the process. It's ready to be accepted. There are 16 additional homes on there. I'm still continuing.
Yeah, keep talking.
Oh, okay. Essentially, this is still an ongoing subdivision. There are two other small cul-de-sacs. One is completely built out. Those roads have not yet been completed for acceptance. And the last cul-de-sac is essentially under development right now. There's another 5 or 6 homes. So essentially, this would lay out the portion at the end of Parker Hill Drive, going back to Briarwood Drive, and again, it's 900 more feet of public way.
Councilor Bean.
Mr. President, do we have any communication from the Commissioner of Public Works or from the Engineering Department regarding the regarding this accepting of the public way?
Clerk will do that. No, we do not.
I personally wouldn't act on this unless I heard from the Commissioner of Public Works or the Engineering Department to make sure that the portion we're talking about meets the city needs and city's requirements. But if we have something from them,
The Public Works Committee recommended that it be granted.
the committee, but we don't have, I'm asking if we have anything from the commission.
I don't know if whose chair was the commissioner before
I was
you?
told that all the as-built were in, and they agreed to us approving that petition.
Okay. And Councilor Barrett has
Yeah,
some.
Mr. President, if I might,
Citizen.
I believe that the petition through the Public Works and with the approval of the commissioner has been obtained. This is the next step in the process to hold a hearing to see if there's any questions or concerns about it. I think from the city's perspective, as far as I understand, there aren't any concerns. And I believe we do have the plans. There's one legal thing that needs to still be done at the end of, once the hearing is concluded, I'll prepare an order that I believe could be presented for the next council meeting, laying out the street, and that will include all the information that we need to have after tonight. So
My only concern was I just didn't want to approve something that I'm not an expert in, and I know in the past there's been some situations where some streets have been approved and the sidewalks weren't right, or there was things wrong with it. Nothing against you, but I just want to make sure we do it properly and do it correctly, and to make sure that the DPW Commissioner and Engineering Department is fully on board with us. So if they are, then I don't have a concern.
Mr. President, through you to Councilor Bean. To Councilor Bean, yes, part of the process as we got along, when it was in the committees, essentially the developer worked with, the developer and his engineering department worked with the city engineer and also DPW. So as my understanding, when it went through the committees, the input came in from DPW and the city engineer that we had produced the as-built. They had gone out and inspected. There was some discussion about the berm coming up to the backers behind the sewers, and this was all addressed and approved.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe we've been through the process.
Okay. Again, my only concern is sometimes there's been issues with the fire department where they can get a truck in and out. I mean, but if that's all been worked out, I'm comfortable with it. But I just want to make sure we're not accepting a public way that's going to give us problems that we're going to have to spend money on later on.
Councilor Joseph.
Are you Mr. Mattson?
Yes, I'm Mr.
Mattson. What is your... This is a question because this really bothers me. What is your incentive to have your street signed off and become a public way?
My biggest incentive right now is I have a pretty good chunk of cash that's just sitting there because Fitchburg has a very high guarantee security in order to make sure you do things right over and above when everything is complete.
What my client is referring to is the bond
Right.
that is required. And essentially, the city sets the bond through the engineering department, as well as 10% overages, and there is a substantial amount of money that my client has basically done the work, and when this is accepted, that bond money would be released.
I just think you've been here before and you've done this many times, and I'm just amazed at the developers that are in this city that don't complete their as-built. They don't complete their streets and their roads. The people that live on them continue to have the developer pick up their rubbish. Their kids have to walk to the end of the street to get the school bus. I just don't understand why. I mean, you need to start some kind of a developer class or something to get these people to finish the job. I mean, I have one petition on Public Works Committee that development's been in place for almost 2 years, and they still haven't signed off on their roads. I mean, they still haven't even put a layer of tar on their roads. That's all they need to do is finish their as-built and stuff. And it just amazes me because you said you got a lot of money tied up in that, but they're off to another project already. And so it's just, I thank you, if this isn't coming off that way, I thank you for what you're doing by doing it properly, because we've come up across this so many times in our city, in really nice neighborhoods, I mean beautiful houses, where the developer just doesn't finish the job. And I appreciate the fact that you finish your jobs.
Well, thank you. For me, it's just, you do it.
Yeah.
You do the job that you're required. If you're required to do something, even if you don't want to do it, get it done with. And the idea of having money tied up and to get it off my back, the sooner the better.
It's very frustrating to have to represent constituents that are still paying a large chunk of money to the city for taxes, but they still don't get all of the city benefits because they don't have, they're not, the streets aren't signed off and things like that. So to me, it just boggles my mind why people would do that to somebody that just bought a home from them for $500,000.
If I could have got people to move, I would have had this thing signed off. I wanted it signed off last December sometime.
Yep.
Just that's how slow the paperwork goes.
And what Mr. Mattson is referring to, it's not city officials moving. It's essentially, he had requirements coming from engineers and surveyors and people that were producing the paperwork that we submitted that was ultimately approved.
I commend you for doing it right and doing it quickly. Thank you.
Council Boishman.
I got one question, Mr. Mayor. If we accept this road tonight, and next year the bottom falls out, are you still responsible?
The only responsibility that he would have is 1 year after he plants the street trees. If they die, he has to replace them. That's under the planning thing. But that's essentially why your engineering department goes out and makes sure that the road base has been done properly, the materials are put down, so your city engineers have inspected and they're satisfied that this has been built to standard. And once these are accepted, then it becomes a responsibility of the city of Fitchburg to provide the maintenance on the road.
Because I kind of feel like Council Bean over there. I like to talk to Lenny. I hear some of the other councils, like Council Tran brought up a thing, and he was in the new development, and part of the road's on a slant. Now, in the wintertime, there's all water that stays right there, and it causes a hazard. And for us to go back and redo it over, it's going to cost us, what, $30,000 plus?
Correct.
$30,000 plus.
If I may speak off the record,
go ahead.
The particular subdivision you're referring to, the developer went belly up, and the city of Fitchburg finished the roads with his bond. It was my client.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments from the councilors?
Just want to make one comment. This area is in West Fitchburg. If you haven't been there, Mr. Mattson has developed a beautiful neighborhood up there. He does a wonderful job.
Thank you. Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm hearing all these concerns, and these concerns can be addressed by simply passing this and put a condition on that, asking for an opinion from the various departments that these councilors are asking for.
My understanding is that the departments have already given their opinions at the Public Works meeting and approved it.
I remember that.
So I personally don't need any more input from any of the department heads myself, but if somebody would like to amend something to add that to it, we could do that. Councilor Bean.
Just adding on to what Councilor Tran said, maybe in the future, maybe through the mayor's office or through the Department of Public Works, could be develop a checklist, similar like we do with other permits and that. So just as things come forward to us, we know that it's been reviewed by the Public Works Department, reviewed by the Fire Department. Maybe just a simple checklist to be added on anytime another road comes in for a situation like this would be just as easy.
And who would you suggest create that and be responsible for it?
I was suggesting to the mayor's office.
Thank you. Councilor Joseph.
I think I know for a fact that checklist exists, and that in order to get to this point where we are tonight, all of those things need to be completed, and that the funnel or the last piece of that is to get through the Public Works Committee to saying that all of those things have been addressed, because I know even the city clerk's office has been involved in what it takes to sign off a street, and the committee was formed, the checklist was done, and we know what it takes through engineering and everything else in order to get a street signed off. Because we've tried to do it with what we consider now to be private ways within the city, which are streets that people have lived on that were built in the 20s and 30s that still are not accepted or can't be accepted by the city. And I think the checklist has been developed and the people follow it to get to this point.
Any other questions or comments from the councils? Anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the petition?
Will the hearing be closed?
Motion to close the hearing.
All have been heard. I declare the hearing closed. The matter is before you.
094-15 be adopted.
182.
182.
282.
282.
282-14?
Second.
We have a motion and a second that 282-14 be adopted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Mr. Long, Croatia then.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Special City Council permit public hearing, 16115. David Hirsch, 539 Longley Road, Groton, Mass. to remodel a two-family property located at 18 Mount Vernon Street, Fitchburg, Mass. I declare the hearing open. Are you David? Good evening.
I purchased a two-family, and it was unoccupied for more than 2 years, and it lost its grandfather on basically being a resident. And I'm here to apply for a permit to remodel the property, put it back into shape, increase the value of the property, increase the taxes, and rent it out, and put some people to work remodeling it.
It was a two-family, and you're looking to keep it as a two-family?
Yes, I am.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Mr. Hirsch, thanks for being here this evening, and thank you for your interest in becoming increasingly further invested in the city of Fitchburg. Mount Vernon Street is a beautiful neighborhood, beautiful residential neighborhood, and particularly this piece of property is kind of at the gateway to kind of a wonderful residential neighborhood in the center of the city. This particular area where your property is located is kind of at a junction of, could go in two different directions, and certainly it's a large property that you're looking to rehab and renovate. Certainly, I hope your intention is indeed to keep it in two-family condition. Am I correct that you own several other pieces of property in the city?
Yes, I do.
I'm going to be careful with numbers here because I haven't done well today. What is it? 322 Elm, 157 Marshall, and 3436 East Street. Are those all your properties?
Yes, they are.
So I went by those properties today. I know that's probably not the entire list of your properties, but in two of the properties were actually in very good condition, well kept, well maintained. I talked to some of your neighbors who had nothing but compliments to say about your properties. There was a property, however, on East Street, and it looks like it was in some state of repair. It looks like you were doing some permitted work there. However, I just noticed, there's trash, there's debris, a door was swung open. It looked like, and I commend you for looks like you're investing in the property. And the reason I'm commenting on this, and I also asked the police department to just run some numbers on calls and reports, and certainly there were some number of calls to a couple of your properties in the city. And again, the only reason I'm bringing this up is I think we all have a lot of work to do in the city, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I think you do a good job in some areas, and I just hope that as you're bringing tenants in and as you continue to rehab these properties, that you keep them clean, that you keep the trash off the street, and that as you bring in tenants, that you're doing the proper background and credit checks to make sure that you're bringing quality residents into these neighborhoods that can continue to be an asset to these neighborhoods, and that your properties can continue to flourish and contribute to these neighborhoods. So thanks again for your investment in Fitchburg, and hope we can continue to work together.
Councilor Joseph.
Is it parking, off-street parking?
There is. It has a 3-car garage, plus it has a large driveway. Could easily handle 6 vehicles. Of course, it'll never handle 6 vehicles because it'll be a two-family.
I thank you for, again, investing your money in our future. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to be clear that you own this property, you're going to renovate it. You're not changing any, from a two-family to a one-family or two-family to three-family. The only reason why you're in front of us for a special permit is because it's been vacant for 2 years, and you want to put it back on the roll. That's all it is. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Boshin.
I got a list here that you say you're going to do on your property. You say here you may repair a wall or tear it down. That's the one next to the sidewalk as you're coming down Mount Vernon.
That's correct.
Are we going to tear it down? Because when I was up there today, it looked like it was pretty bad condition.
Yeah, it is deteriorating a lot. Over the winter, it fell apart.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure we're just going to tear it down, make it lawn, and that's it.
Now, when you talk about paint, and I know I'm going to get some feedback about this, but some people say, I'm going to paint. So they go out and they paint their banister, and they said I did the requirements that I said I was going to do. Are you going to paint the whole exterior of the house, or are you going to put vinyl siding on the house?
So the property on East Street right now has asbestos siding, and I am putting vinyl siding on that. I also put vinyl siding on 157 Marshall. I intend to put vinyl siding on it, but that probably won't be for 2 years. The first year will be redoing the interior of the property, then getting some cash flow from it, and then I'll be putting the vinyl siding on. So the paint will be an initial cosmetic touch-up with a long-term coming down the road.
And then the final question. I'm very picky, and I mean picky, about overgrowth. Will we cut the grass in the front and the bushes and maintain the front of the building? Because when I was up there today, I know it's not your fault because it's been vacant for 2 years, but once you get your hands in there, are you going to maintain the front of the property with the grass or bushes and cut them all the time, or are you going to rip everything out?
I have a landscaper that on that particular property I'm going to have go over there and take a look at it. I'm going to go for something that's low maintenance, and I don't know what that's going to be. There is a large area on the side as well as the front, and I think it's going to be some gravel and shrubs, and there'll be some grass there.
Okay. But we are going to cut it.
Absolutely.
And
The minute that I get the go-ahead, that's one of the first things that's going to happen.
So Councilor Chris Merrick, when he's driving up there and he sees that the grass up this side, he won't have to call the Board of Health. It'll be cut all the time.
Correct.
Okay, I got no problem.
Councilor Natale.
Thank you. Mr. Hirsch, I am hesitant to support this because of the numerous issues that have been going on at your East Street property. The police, Board of Health, Building Department have all told me that they've been called several times to that property. And the situation, as far as I'm concerned from talking to them, has not been resolved. So I have a problem with that. And
I'd like to address that. I
Okay.
have one neighbor that, when I bought the property, came over and said the building should be torn down. And since that time, he has done everything in his power to complain on every single incident. The other neighbors that are around are tickled to death that the property is being cleaned up, that the vinyl siding is being done, and that their property is going to get a raise in value because my property, which is without a doubt, when I bought it, was the worst one on the street, and when I finish, it will be one of the best ones on the street. But it will not satisfy the person next to me.
understood. My discussions with them, there were some legitimate complaints that were filed, though. That's what they told me, these departments. So I don't. Maybe it's a dispute with you and the neighbors, but that was just my standpoint of it, and I hope you can understand my position on that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments by the councilors? Councilor Beazall.
Yeah, I know that you talked about 36 East Street, and that's my ward, and I get quite a few calls on that. And I just want to let you know that I actually went to that house one day because somebody was parked in the middle of the road. And I drove to the house, people were outside, I gave them my counselor card, and I said, I was wondering if you would mind moving your car because an emergency vehicle cannot get through here. The person told me he would not remove the car. And I said, well, I want to take a picture of it just so I could show the police department what I'm talking about. He proceeded to take a video of me taking a car and taunted me as I took a picture of his car. So I will not support this tonight. I'll be honest with you, I was very respectful to them. I was nice to them. It was the first time I ever met them, to the point where the guy took the card and threw it back at me. Okay? Well, I guess what I'm saying is my confidence in you as running a business is kind of shattered by that. So I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the councilors?
President.
Councilor Bean.
This has nothing to do with the owner or the person here, but I've kind of have a different philosophy about housing here in Fitchburg now, and mine is that we have too much multifamily housing, too much low-grade housing, and I'm not putting that. We should be looking more to upgrade our cost of a medium price of a house, not lowering it. And I think we talked about the median income as being $45,000. The median price of a house in Fitchburg is like $125,000, way below what we have in the area. So my thing is that I hate to say it, but the neighbor next door, I'd rather see a lot of these houses torn down. I think we have a glut of too many multifamily homes and should be geared more towards single-family home where people live in them and become a stronger neighborhood. Just a philosophy has nothing to do with your business practices, or I know it may not be the most business-friendly, but it's kind of a way that I have to kind of set myself straight in order to be able to see if the city's going to move forward. So that would be my position on this.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Just to respond very briefly, I do not believe that this neighborhood would benefit from a vacant lot. And if you travel on this road, there are several other vacant lots here. I believe there's a large property that, if rehabbed the correct way, could be a benefit to this neighborhood. Certainly, the burden will be on Mr. Hirsch to comply, to conform, to work with the building and health departments to make sure he's doing this the right way. I don't think another vacant building or another idle building on this street does any benefit to this area. I think we're better off the sooner we get residents in. Again, Mr. Hirsch, I know the residents around that area will be vigilant, as will I. So I just urge you to do this the right way, but you'll have my support.
Councilor Green.
My question to you is, Mr. Hirsch, is do you oversee the properties directly, or do you have a property management company that does that for you?
I do that with my wife.
All right. So hearing some concerns about maybe some other problematic properties, would you be willing to address some of those issues at your other property to keep, to get better at maybe a better tenant screening or a different level of tenant going into your properties moving forward, where we have some concerns about tenant issues at some of your existing properties?
Absolutely. One of the things that I have just done is that I bought cameras for my Elm Street property. I'm installing cameras so that I can watch what's going on. I intend to do that at Marshall and at all the properties. I was thinking of, with the fires that are going on in town, I was getting nervous and I wanted to make sure that they were monitored. I'd put a sign out front. I honestly didn't think there was that type of problem. I'm kind of shocked on some of the things that I just heard. But that certainly would help that situation.
Because we see the records, we get reports of the calls, what types of calls are being made, how often calls are being made. So I just want to make sure that, again, moving forward, that you've heard our concerns, that, we do have some problematic properties, and we don't want the new one to be one of those properties.
Neither do I.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the councilors? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the petition? Mr. Donnelly.
Good evening, my name is Tom Donnelly. I live in Fitchburg. I'm also in a butter to this property. I followed the property for probably 40, 50 years. It was the Ilarios, the accountant. Bob Ilario grew up there. Was well maintained for many, many years, and I don't know when it actually transferred hands and fell into disrepair. But the house next door, I believe, is around 14 apartments. If you go up the hill, one building, Mr. Gogan built it for special needs. A few years ago, he had to get a special permit or a zoning variance from the city to build it. So it's sandwiched in between. I think the property could be a good two-family. I think this is the third hearing that I've come to that's been a special permit. One on Chestnut Street for 5 units that was denied, which I think should be denied and the building should come down. The other was a single family on Prospect Street, which also it's on the same street that I live. And I thought it was unnecessary for the hearing, but I think it's setting a good precedent that people have to come in and tell their needs and what they do plan on doing, because I know there's going to be a lot more multi-families, when I say multi, 3s, 4s, 5s, that are going to have to come before. But I support this. I got a call from a couple of councilors, and I gave them my opinion earlier about some of these things. And historically, if you want to see some bad examples of the city participated and actually funded a building on the corner of Academy Street and Elm Street years ago, and it was funded. And some people want to judge the project by the applicant. I suggest to you that you judge the project by the building, because applicants come and go. The buildings usually stay. The corner of Academy and Elm, hundreds of thousands of dollars put in there, 2 7-unit buildings, not one parking space. And it was approved years ago. CDBG funded a part of it. It was a big, so we're talking about an individual. He's not going to keep it for his life, I don't think. But it's a real estate deal. He'll own it for a little while. But the owners that did all this work in around 2004 lost it. Now Fitchburg Affordable Housing or CDC or somebody is taking care of it. And as we're speaking, there is big money sunk into it again. The CDBG program has sunk money for many, many years into some of these old buildings. They get fixed up, they get sold, they come in, somebody else gets a loan, fixes it up, it gets sold. It's just a big cycle. So I suggest that this is a reasonable project for two-family. It's a big yard, plenty of parking. It'll be an asset to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
May I speak in neutrality of the petition?
Neutrality? We don't have that. We have in favor or in opposition, Chief. But we'll let you straddle that fence.
I just feel obligated to speak because I was asked to do some research on Mr. Hirsch's properties, and I did that undertaking today. I researched all his properties. Just a reminder that we have things in place in the city that hold landlords accountable through our NICE committee. If there's issues, I'm not afraid to bring him in front of the NICE committee to hold him responsible for his properties. What I saw at his properties, the numbers weren't alarming. Some of the issues on East Street were neighbor disputes, where I was advised by the council what was going on down there. I sent a police captain down there to try to resolve that. But from what I saw today, looking at the numbers, there was nothing alarming here. And if there is issues, I'll be the first to summons him in front of the NICE committee. So I just felt it was important that I speak about that this evening.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? All has been heard. Declare the hearing closed. The matter is now before the council.
Second.
We have a motion.
Yes, it does.
Right. We have a motion and a second to approve 16115. Before I call for a vote, councilors, just make sure everybody's aware that this is a 2/3 vote that is necessary in order for it to pass. It's not a roll call.
No, it's not a
It's not a roll call. So we have a motion and a second to approve 160-115. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1, 2, in opposition. So it passes 8-3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Order loan order 168-15. Can you speak up, Counselor? I'm sorry.
Motion to take 168 up to including 170, 150 finance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to send 168-15, 170-15, and 171-15 to the Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Order other 172-15, authorizing the city clerk to notify the voters of the preliminary election to be held on September 22nd, 2015.
Suspension of rules.
Motion and second for suspension of rules on 172-15. All those in favor of suspension?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is before you.
Second.
Motion and second that 172-15 be adopted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Ordinance 173-15. Ordinance at Chapter 169, Section 24 of the Code of City of Fitchburg entitled Parking Prohibited at All Times, as most recently amended, be further amended by deleting therefrom. Name of street, Fairmont Street West from Wildwood Drive to Oak Hill Road, and by adding Fairmont Street East from Plymouth Street to Oak Hill Road, reference petition 139-15.
Sent to its first reading.
Second.
Motion and second that 173-15 be sent to its first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. 174-15, an ordinance at Chapter 169, Section 24 of the Code of City of Fitchburg entitled Parking Prohibited at All Times, as most recently amended, be further amended by deleting therefrom Pearl Hill Road East from John Fitch Highway to number 150, and by adding thereto Pearl Hill Road both from John Fitch Highway to Fisher Road, reference petition 291-14.
Second.
Motion the second that 174-15 be sent to its first reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? One in opposition.
Motion to send 175-15 and 176-15.
Second.
Motion and second that 175-15 and 176-15 be sent to public hearings on October 6th. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Petitions.